USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's fifth week of player-run practices. USC held their 8th and 9th practices this week. Dan, let's start off first what we saw. It seems like they're doing more business as usual, not straying too much from their practices, their plans that they have going each week.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I really like is they've continued what we saw in spring. I mean, this is our offense. We're going to do it every day, and we're going to install it over the first 3 days, and we're just going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating until we get it perfect. And we're going to be able to run it better when we, play you. Then you're going to be able to get ready in a week to stop it. And so they're not reinventing the wheel or anything else when they go out there. They're basically sticking to, this is how we practice, this is what we do, this is how we run all our routes, this is how we get a lot of throws and catches in. And I know we emphasized, player run practice before it was player run practice. The whole emphasis was on passing. It was a summer passing, whatever. But I think, quietly what really is important is that the defense kind of doing it that same way over and over and over again. So, and they will tell you the defense hasn't changed. It's not going to change, and Clancy's not going to change it. They've made it, simpler in terms of terminology and in communicating it back and forth. But the thing, and you can't really, see it. You can see the offense to some extent. You can't really see the defense. So, but that's what they're doing, is doing it over and over and over again. So they've got it perfectly. They understand where everybody has to be, how they have to react, how they have to communicate with one another. Having, it be simpler and fewer words makes that easier. So they all like that. But that they just have to, make that work for them. I think it helps that the offense is going about it the way they are. I think that helps the defense do it kind of the same way. Repeat, get it perfect. You don't have to think about it. You can, and both of them are trying to play fast and trying to be out there and understand it so well you don't have to think about it. And I know Josh Fallow, talking about it in the war room a little bit, he says the difference last year was he always had to think about, what the call is and what the defense is doing and what. He says now we just go out and play. We just go. And he said this is a whole lot better. That's the same thing you hope for the defense, that all they got to do is go out there and play because they know exactly what everybody's going to do, and all they got to do is do it. And last year, pretty much like the offense, it didn't look like they always knew what they were supposed to do or were able to do it.
Mm-hmm. We did see some changes on the defense, though, in the spring as far as position goes. We saw Palaie Naiotote and John Houston change from their original positions. They switched from Mike to Will to Mike. We weren't sure in spring whether or not that was something that they were experimenting with or whether or not that was going to change. But you talked to players, and it sounds like that's sticking for the fall.
Yeah, I know. John is Houston is 225 right now, which is the biggest he's ever been. And I know I saw Aaron Osmus said he wants him at 232. So he's been pretty successful in getting guys, where they need to be weight-wise. But Palaie went the other direction. He had gotten as big as 255 last year, and he's down to 245. And he said that's much better for him. He's got that great lateral quickness and that, ability to just take people down. And I think he's kind of going to be the run stopper, the guy that you get, in that off tackle hole that just takes somebody out of there who the offensive line can't get to. And I think John Houston, they're going to run him lots of different places. I mean, that's the advantage of having somebody like that. He's not going to be that easy, for an offensive lineman, to stay in front of. I do think it would tell you that he's probably not just going to sit there, read and react. It would tell you that he's probably going to be moving on most every play and trying to get somewhere, and in coordination with with a much sounder defensive line that's really emphasizing gap control and integrity. And again, that was something they didn't have last year. But I mean, I like the theory. I like the way they're going about it, and I like who they're going at it with and where they are. So. But they seem pretty comfortable with it. But again, with defense, you're not going to get to see that till sometime in August.
Yeah, for sure. As Dan alluded to, Ryan Abraham and I got to talk to strength and conditioning coach Aaron Osmus on Wednesday night on Tunnel Vision. So if you haven't watched that yet, be sure to check it out on the YouTube channel somewhere around here. But we got to talk to quarterback Matt Fink today for the first time since he entered the transfer portal after spring camp. We got to talk about his kind of decision process of leaving and then coming back, but also his health status, his knee. What do you have to say about those two things?
Yeah, I mean, he's a lot of things happened to him. I thought he's really, I mean, I think I can understand why they're really happy to have him back, not just the coaches, but the players too. I mean, he's really taken a leadership role. He said, I said, what do you see as your role? And, I'm a senior backup quarterback, and I'm going to do all the things I can do to help this become, be a really better team. He's an advertisement in some ways for the strength program. Here's a guy who came in at 170, now he's 212. He also had a little bit of a, health issue where he chipped a bone on the back of his femur when he was like 14 or 15 and chipped a little piece off that apparently somehow had migrated in his knee to the point where his knee really swelled up, and they did an MRI to locate it and a few attempts surgically, and they were able to remove it, but it was really causing him some real pain this summer. But I think he just looked at everything, talked to his family, talked to his friends, and just decided, you know what, I really love it here at USC. I love these players. I love being with them. He also, I think, feels some responsibility. He says our senior class, the class I came in with, we've had our ups and downs, and more than half of them are gone. And he said, I could have left, and my message is I chose not to. And he's graduated. He's applying to different master's programs here, but he a very strong statement about how much he believes in Clay Helton, how much he wants to be around these guys, and how he's kind of willing to do anything, whether it's in the PRPs, in the weight room, at the dinner table, whatever. He said he's trying to take the freshman class, for example. He said, I'm not just dealing with quarterbacks and the offense. He said, anybody on that freshman group, he said, trying to take them under my wing and be the kind of leader that we need. And he said, I've learned from some of the things that didn't go so well. And really, I think USC is very fortunate to have him come back.
Yeah. Another guy who entered the transfer portal and returned to USC, wide receiver Velus Jones. We got to talk to him for the first time as well. Now, he skipped spring but did come back. He explained to us that it was due to a family matter. His grandfather was sick, and he debated whether or not to get closer to home or not. He said sometimes you have to be selfish, and so he chose to be back at USC. But we got to talk to him for an extended period of time. What did you learn from that conversation, Dan?
Well, I mean, I think he decided, look, family's really, really important, and he again had very much good to say about Clay, and how Clay treated him and gave him the opportunity to make a decision. And he visited. It's interesting. He visited Tennessee, where T. Martin is, and he visited Western Kentucky, where Clay's brother is the head coach. So those were the two places he visited, and both of them would have been closer to home. And his grandmother passed away in 2012, and he said his grandfather's the only person on that side of the family, living. And then he said, though he really wanted to be with his team. And I think he also wants to see how this works. I mean, he thinks they've got a chance to be pretty good, and he could be a part of that in this offense. And so I think professionally, he's also thinking, he's going to have a degree from USC, but also an opportunity to play in this offense might be the best thing for him. So he made the decision, and it was clear, I think, in both cases that USC had already let them know, if you want to come back, we'll let you come back. Yeah. And that doesn't happen with everybody. There aren't enough scholarships to do that with everybody, but selectively USC wanted those two guys to come back if they wanted to come back. And I think they're real, I know there are people, think about guys that went in the portal and and come back? Have they turned their back on the team, or is the team not going to trust them, or whatever? You don't get any sense of that with the way this has worked out. You get a sense of USC probably better off for them coming back the way they did it and the way it all played out. So it was kind of a real positive time to be able to talk to both Matt and Velus.
Yeah, and to your point, we had heard that Velus Jones actually talked to the team and apologized for leaving and coming back, which, I mean, he doesn't really have that big of a reason to apologize for, all things considered. But another guy we got to talk to and catch up with was center Brett Nealon. You got to talk to him on Tuesday. You got to catch up on where he is football-wise, the offensive line, but also about fellow offensive lineman Austin Jackson, who's actually out. He's not at USC right now because he gave bone marrow to his sister who has a diamond blackfan anemia. He was doing the workouts on his own while getting ready for that operation. He said he already did it, but that's what Brett Nealon said. I think it went well, but what did you learn from your conversation with Nealon?
Well, how close this offensive line group is. Yeah. I mean, the five of them that came in 2017. That's interesting how that group has really stayed together with Austin Jackson and Jalen McKenzie and Andrew Voorhees and Brett and who am I missing? Anyway, in that group. Elijah Vera Tucker. And that they really keep up with one another and follow one another with all the ways you can follow one another in social media in terms of, doing the workouts and things like that. I mean, you got the sense that they were kind of there, in the operating room with him and all that kind of, that they're that close. And I think that's really a good thing for an offensive line. Yeah. Again, that's another one of these signs that last year you didn't get the sense at this time of year that everybody was on the same page or all working together. You got, guys were saying we're trying to get them to follow and we're trying to do this, and it just didn't happen last year. This year, kind of, completely different feeling about how that's going. But I think they're really, as much as maybe for the last month, Austin Jackson's been in Phoenix with his family and getting ready for, I think in a lot of ways it's helped bring these guys closer together. And so if you can make that work, that's really a good thing. So this team seems like they're able to do things like that maybe we just didn't see last year.
Yeah. Well, we're getting closer to fall camp, if you can believe it, which is crazy. I feel like we were just talking about spring, fall, it comes every year. But it sounds like USC is going to have one more week, at least, maybe 2 weeks of PRPs. There'll be Pac-12 Media Day in between that, and then fall camp starts pretty soon in August. So stay tuned for that. But Dan, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we always kind of look at Pac-12 Media Day as, and it's the 24th of July, as the kind of the official, unofficial start, whatever. And practice is going to start August 2nd. But the way it's kind of working out, this pretty much seems like an extension of spring. And you get a sense that they do understand what they need to do, and they go out there and do it. And the name you hear, almost more than anybody right now, and it's the kind of thing you hear if you went to Clemson or you went to Alabama or you went to Ohio State. Very often in the off-season, the name you would hear would be that of the guy running the strength and conditioning program. Yeah. He's the guy that spends more time with the players than anybody. He's their coach. This year, the name you hear is Aaron Osmus, Aaron Osmus. And it's the way big-time programs work. And he's got his group of coaches, and they're basically dedicated to football, yeah. Which is, again, the way big-time programs work. And there's kind of a sense of confidence that they have been able to come together in the way that a program has to come together. And, that's the name you're hearing, Aaron Osmus. Yep. And they really love what he's challenged them, he's pushed them, he's mixed them up, he's got, I think Matt Fink was talking about he's the captain of Team Nasty. And he said there are special teams guys on there, and there are defensive guys on there, and offensive guys. He said we're all mixed up, and they compete together. I think that's a really good thing. Yeah. Because last year you were down on the field in games. I got the feeling some of those games the players didn't even want to talk to one another. They'd rather talk to the people in the stands, or there was just a sense of. There were times when some of the players they just weren't all communicating together.
Yeah.
And you don't get that feeling now. They hang, it looks like they hang together.
Yeah, and that's what we've heard from players too. When I talked to Michael Pittman, he said, you're so used to going against the defense, you don't really interact with them. But now, when you're in those challenges that Aaron Osmus puts you through, you're looking right next to you, and it's a special teams guy, it's a defensive guy, it's the whole team mixing up. And I mean, I keep referencing it, but our talk with Aaron Osmus on Wednesday night, he talked about those teams and how he broke them up, and he chose leaders, and the team also chose leaders, and they matched up. Okay, who does the team think are leaders, and who do we as the strength coaches think are leaders? Addressing those leadership maybe mishaps that happened last year, addressing a different culture, keeping people accountable. It all sounds like good things, and that's what we're hearing from the players. And like you said, that's just the name of the summer.
Right. I mean, that's what we're seeing. I know there are people who challenge you and say, but this so-and-so is still the head coach, or so. Yeah. Did you see him? Yeah, we saw him. We wrote about it. We talked about it every day. We weren't, we were pretty nervous going into the season, and all you were hoping was that, something worked out. But it's a different feeling. Now, does that guarantee anything? It doesn't guarantee anything. All it does is allows us to tell you what we see and how we compare it to what we've seen before. Does it guarantee that they won't hit the second week of August and then say, let's try to conserve ourselves for the season, or once the season gets here, well, then we don't have to go so hard because we might get somebody. Yeah. No, we can't guarantee that. I mean, we know that they've made a lot of changes. The changes they've made seem to be the right changes for this team. This team has responded well, and they're doing well right now. Does that guarantee they're going to, it's just going to go on through to, end of November? Absolutely not. But we need to tell you what we see and how it looks compared to how it's looked in the past. And I mean, USC is always going to have some pretty good talent. So when we say, if this happens or that happens, they can be pretty good. Well, that goes without saying. I mean, they had the fourth best roster in that country going into last season. So to say that, they look pretty good, of course. Yeah. Does that mean they're going to play pretty good, or they're going to coach them up pretty good? No, not at all. So far, they've coached them up pretty well. I mean, the guy that's coaching them this summer for a great deal of this is Aaron Osmus. He's done a good job. Yeah. So, and Graham Harrell's offense, it's out there every day. I mean, what we saw, in the 15 spring practices, we're seeing every day now. Mm-hmm.
They're observations, not predictions. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say already.
Don't bet the house.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for Week 5 of USC's player run and practices. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.